Oh, if you hear a funny ticking noise, it's because I put washing machine on and I've got an audible feeling that I ain't checked pockets and that there might be a pound coin rattling about in here. Anyway, this video focusing on football today rather than all the off-field distractions and shenanigans that I'm sure we're all sick of by now. So I want to talk about Player of the Year. Now every week I write down my player of the match and one or two runners and riders and contenders, and then I've collated them all through to the end of the season. But on top of those votes that I do week by week, I always go by the feeling test as well, so I always add that into the mix. And who do I feel overall over the season has had a good year? And looking at those things together, that's how I come up with who's won it. Now there's one or two players who are up there week in, week out, getting the votes when you break it down. But there's been some other runners and riders and people who's come into the team and given some really sterling performances that have impressed. The first player who's sort of on this list, Cedi Gassama. He came in last year with Masaba and he was probably behind him in the pecking order, you know, and he looked what he was. A young lad with a bit of talent, decision making not always the best, quite slight, you know, easily knocked off the ball. He's come in this season and looked an entirely different player. He looks stronger in the shoulder, he's not knocked off the ball, he's got more Weeble-like ability this season. He takes a hit but he stays on his feet. Probably until the last 3 or 4 games he's been going down a lot, but I put that down to tiredness because it's been his first, I would say, full proper season in professional football. He had some games last season, but this season he's been a sort of mainstay of the side, and I think towards the end probably we've seen a little bit of that fatigue sort of slipping in. But on top of his bulk this season and his strength, his decision making has been so much better as well. Scored goals for us, 7 goals. He's played 40-odd games in the league. He's played in the cup. He showed versatility. He's played left, right. He's actually played down middle as well. And what I've really enjoyed this season about him is his decision making's been better. His pass choice has been better. But also taking responsibility. And what I mean by that is wanting the ball in an audible game. Because sometimes when it's an audible game, people don't want the ball. Or they move it on as quick as they can. He's always got that willingness to drive on. And he brings something, when you're under the cosh, which we have been at times this season, he brings something else. He brings you drive. He drives up the pitch with the ball, which allows your back four to get out. And he's had a terrific season. And what he's done with his performances this season as well is he's made himself a saleable asset. Now as supporters we always want to be seeing the best players and you want to keep hold of your best players, but in terms of a business, whence he's got to make himself sustainable. And his performances this season have sort of put him in the window of, he's an exciting young prospect of a player who it's worth clubs taking a punt on. You know, if you're at the bottom end of the Premier League, there's no doubt at all that your scouts will have been seeing performances like Gassama's put in this season. Thought, there's a lad who's worth a punt. So he's put himself in the shop window in that sense. And although, like I said, we don't want to lose players like that, his upward trajectory has made him a saleable asset. And that's what, I said we're going to get into a wider debate, but as a club, that's what you've got to do with players. You've got to get them in, you've got to turn him around, you've got to make him better, and you've got to move them on. And then you've got, with the money you make from selling a Gassama or whatever, you then bring in 2 for maybe half of that fee a piece and try and do the same again. That's how you've got to do it. Terrific season. Still got a lot to learn, but if he can do the same next season, who knows what he can do. Because the potential's there, the talent's there, and this has been a really good second season for Cedi Gassama. As we're going through these, another player that came on the list, which might be quite surprising, is Callum Patterson. Now I know, yes, I am a signed-up member of the Callum Patterson fan club, but he's not had as many games as you'd think to get the number of recognitions that he's had. So he's 27 games in the league, you know, which I think Gassama's had 40 odd. And he's had an impact, and Callum Patterson divides opinion. I'm not sure why. I think because of his style. I think some people think that if you put your centre back, it means you're not a footballer, if you know what I mean. You're not a technician. And Callum Patterson himself will tell you, he's not Lionel Messi. He's not going to beat 3 men and curl one in top bins from 40 yards. But is he an effective unit? Is he effective in a team unit? And yes, he is. He's very effective. But he weren't inside so much at the beginning of the season. But he's done what he always does under different gaffers. He's perhaps not fancied. And then he forces his way into the thinking. He shows him, actually, you're missing something here by not picking me. He's coming towards the back half of the season. I think he's had 27 games, 6 goals. But that's only one less game than Masaba, who we're saying has had an excellent season, which he has. Patterson's only got 1 goal less. And only had a fraction of the starts. He does win headers, he does win tackles, he does put himself about, he creates chaos and he creates space for the other players, but I think we sometimes overlook what he can do with the ball. The recent home game when he played on the right hand side of midfield, and his versatility is another thing to think about. He was putting in some absolutely fantastic crosses from that right wing. And really varying him up. They weren't just hit and hope crosses, they were clipping him to back stick, low hard crosses. In fact, it was a low hard cross that we got the goal from. Curling ones in front of man for them to attack. He was putting some really good delivery in box. And as I said, he's chipped in with goals. We know what he brings as a personality. We know what he brings in terms of roughhousing folks and shithousing, buying free kicks, buying time. But on top of that, it's actually backed you up with stats. The points that we win when he's in the team, and he scored goals, and he's actually got more assists as well than Gassama. So Callum Patterson, whilst not everybody's cup of tea, and only playing probably half of the games that he was available to play, has actually had an excellent season. Josh Windas, he's got to be up there. Top scorer for Wednesday this season, made himself the top scorer this since the turn of the millennium. 5 assists, I think it is as well. Josh Windas divides opinion. I think a lot of that is based on his public profile, let's put it that way. But I don't really judge players on that, I judge on what I see on the pitch. And Josh Windas, he's turned in the numbers. He's scored the goals that have helped keep us in the division this season, which was the aim before we started after last season. We knew it was going to be another tough season. Brings a versatility, left, right, in the hole. Can play up front in there. I've seen him in midfield at times this season. And what I would say is, does he have quiet games? Yes, he does have quiet games. All players have quiet games. When he's on it, he's one of the best that we've got in the club. And I always say this, I always think we look a better team when Josh Windas is in it. He's got the numbers this season, scored some fantastic goals. I do not know how he hasn't won goal at season for that goal against Derby. I will never know how he's not won that. Talk that he might be leaving the club. I think that's Wednesday's loss. And what I would say about Josh Windas is, how much does it cost to get a player who can do a similar job, who can get them similar number of goals, who brings that versatility, without having money to spend, because I think you'd have to spend money to get someone in to do what he's done. You'd having to take a punt on a young kid instead, and then having to show patience. And the position that we're probably going to be in next season, are we going to have the time and the luxury to show that sort of patience with a player to do that? So I think Josh has had a really good season, and as I said, scored the goals that really have probably kept us in it. One player who's popped up on my list with some decent scores, and he's not played that much, 22 starts, Michael Hecwood. Now, he was in at the beginning of the season, then he was out for a long period, about 15 games, maybe something like that. I think it was October to maybe mid-January, he was out of the team, out of the squad. Obviously not in the plans, and I think, if you're being honest, you would say at the beginning of the season, when everyone's fit, he was probably 4th, 5th choice centre half. That's just how it is. That's football. That's a manager deciding what he thinks is his best match day squad. But he's coming towards the end. And I know we can talk about him and say, you know, what's his level? That's a thing that gets thrown about a lot. What's his level? And he was excellent for us in third. And some people, this level beyond him. But he's coming at the back end of the season. I think he's performed really well. We've struggled at the back this season with injuries, with conceding goals. He's come in, and those sort of old-fashioned things that we talk about with defenders, heading it, blocking it, tackling, he's come in and just done that. And sometimes it is those basic things that you need in the back four. You don't need to overcomplicate things. And he's come in and put in some excellent performances at back end of the season. He also likes heading. I know, again, it's old-fashioned, but he heads things in our box. He wins loads of aerial duels, and we've not been brilliant at set pieces this season in the attacking third. And they didn't improve greatly throughout the season, but we saw some different routines. But what we suddenly did see, even though it might not have always led to goals, although he did bag one, was Michael Hecwood was getting his head on a load of things in there because he's brave. He brought a sense of bravery to that back four and, like I said, the attacking set pieces. So he's come in and possibly surprised me a little bit and got some good scores on the board. Barry Bannan. It's funny because Barry Bannan's not going to win my award this season, and it's almost like everyone else, and I think everyone's guilty of this. I think we almost take him for granted, what he does. And there's lots of, I see lots of debate online. Barry Bannan's getting old, we can't keep relying on Barry Bannan. But until somebody better comes along, you do have to rely on Barry Bannan. And he's in there as a captain and a leader on the park. And he leads by example. And sometimes I see people saying Barry Bannan just shouts at people, what sort of captains are. It's not just about what a captain says, it's about what a captain does. And Barry Bannan never gives up the ghost from the first minute to the 95th minute, whether the score's 1-0 or 4-0. He's out there giving absolutely everything. He's still the best passer of a ball, the most creative player we've got in the club. I think he's got 5 assists for this season. Played through with an injury when a lot of people, let's be honest, would have, right now that's me, let me get the operation and look after myself. He's played through that at a time in his career when it takes you longer to get over injuries as well. He's led by example. I think he's another one who's had a brilliant season. And I think he's been allowed to have a good season by the shape that Danny's played in getting extra bodies in there around him. And certainly, in the case of Shea Charles setting that defensive midfield position, what we've seen Barry Bannan this season is getting him forward in the positions on the pitch where he best operates. So I think Baz has had an excellent season. But my actual player here, it's come down to two. It's come down to 2 players, which is Shea Charles and Max Lowe. Now Max Lowe's come into the club as a left back, obviously made the cross city move, which puts a load of pressure on your shoulders before you've even started, because it's almost like people are waiting for you to fail. Oh, what do you expect? One of them. And of course United fans, I suspect, probably hoping that he'd come in and be terrible for us, they could, Agent Lowe and blah blah blah. Came in and played an handful of games at fullback. His debut against Plymouth at left fullback was absolutely excellent. Now, we've heard a lot about his injuries previously, and until the back end of the season, ironically, against United, when he got injured, he's had a clear run. But what's impressed me most about Max Lowe is, again, and I've talked about this with a lot of players on this list, the versatility. He's had to go in and play at centre-half because of the injury crisis we've had back there, and although he's not very big, and there's been times when we might have conceded a goal and I've thought somebody 5 inches taller, they probably gets their head on that and stuff like that. He's done brilliantly, especially defending on the floor. When players are running at you, which is defenders' worst nightmare, at centre-half, he's been exceptional. Standing his ground, keeping his eye on the ball and just getting a strong block tackle in there. He's had a fantastic season overall. First season at the club. And he's our player. That's the impressive thing, he's our player. Long term, I would like to see him play at left back. I think he's played maybe 6 or 7 games out there, and I think he's looked very good. When he's played at full back, he's really given us something going forward. He's a lot better on the ball than I was expecting him to be. And he brings a drive down that side of the pitch and a natural balance. But he's also done that at centre-half as well. There's been times I've seen him marauding forward from the left-sided centre-half position. And overall, for his debut season, I think he's been brilliant. I think he's been one of our best bits of business that we did last summer. As I said, he's coming as a left full-back. He's ended up having to convert to a centre-half, not his natural position. And he's took to it like a duck to water. And like I said, if he was a little bit bigger, I could see that he could easily play ahead all the time. But hopefully moving forward, we can get him onto that left-hand side. Brilliant season. And I was half tempted to give him my player of the season because he's ours. It feels somehow a little bit wrong giving player of the season to someone who doesn't belong to us. But I've got to, because my 24-25 player of the season is Shea Charles. 44 games in the league, 5 assists from a defensive line midfield position. And I keep forgetting that he's only 21 years old, and I wish that we could afford him. Never going to happen, sadly. Because he's a young player that you can build a team around. As a fulcrum in midfield, as that deep line player, in my eyes, that's what you build a football team around. He's got the range of passing, he's strong, he's athletic, he's very much in that new mould of player, very athletic, good in the tackle. He's dropped back, he's played, 6 games at centre-half? Piece of piss for him. And he's only 21 years old. But the thing that's impressed me most about Shea Charles, and this is age-specific as well, is his reading of understanding of when and where. His pass choice is nearly always spot on. Does he underhit them now and again? Every single player in the world underhits them. I've seen Lionel Messi underhit a pass, do you know what I mean? But his decision making and his awareness, the number of times I've seen a ball coming into him and he looks like he's under pressure, and a lot of players would rush that pass out and he'll just open his body and just step out the other way because he's got that awareness of what's happening around him. He's absolutely fantastic. He is my player of the season, Shea Charles. I wish him all the best in his future. I'd love to see him back here at some stage. Fantastic player. And it brings a bit of sadness that he's getting this award, because I know he's not ours, but you can't argue with the facts, you can't argue with the stats, and most importantly, you can't argue with what you see with your own eyes. That lad is an exceptional young player, and he is my 2024-25 player of the season, Shea Charles. Oh, I'm going to send him a packet of hobnobs, because that's what I like to do, because they work hard all season, aren't they, these lads, professional athletes. And I was thinking, player of the year, you can get a bit of etched glass, you can get a little trophy, but after a season of hard graft, what do you really want? An hobnob. But I don't know where to send them. Do I send them here? Do I send them to St Mary's? I just don't know. What a player, that boy. What a player. And if we'd been run properly over the last 10 years, we might have been able to afford a player like that. No, leave it there, Jim. Leave it there. Finish on a positive. Some excellent performances from our lads this season that have kept us in the division and given us a building block for next year, when hopefully we can move forward again.